In August 1859, the Pacific Northwest coast was on the verge of a bloodbath. 5 massive Royal Navy warships sat anchored in the fog, aiming over 70 cannons directly at the shoreline, waiting for the order to open fire. Staring back at them from a hastily dug dirt trench on the hill were 461 American infantrymen. They were vastly outgunned, gripping their muskets, completely surrounded, and refusing to surrender. When empires point cannons at each other, it is usually over something of immense value: massive gold deposits, vast tracts of conquerable land, or kidnapped royalty. But these two global superpowers had marched to the absolute edge of war over a dead, potato-eating pig. This military standoff was not a random flare-up. To get armies in the dirt pointing guns at each other, a government usually has to make a critical mistake years in advance. In this case, the fuse had been lit 13 years prior, in a negotiation room thousands of miles away.
This is the Oregon Treaty of 1846, dividing American and British territories along the 49th parallel. It worked perfectly on land, but the drafters left a massive loophole. Reaching the Pacific, the handwritten text stated the border must follow the, quote, middle of the channel. This map shows why that failed. There wasn't one channel, but 2. The U.S. claimed the Haro Strait border out west, while Britain argued for Rosario Strait in the east. The San Juan Islands were trapped in the middle. To avoid an immediate conflict, the two powers agreed to a joint occupancy of the islands throughout the 1850s. That meant British Hudson's Bay Company sheep farmers were suddenly sharing the exact same land with American gold rush dropouts trying to stake claims. When diplomats draw borders using ambiguous language, they don't solve the problem. They just pass the burden down to ordinary citizens on the ground. And it was only a matter of time before those citizens crashed into each other. That crash came in the form of Lyman Cutler, an American settler trying to grow potatoes on San Juan Island. He spent his days fighting a losing battle against the British-owned livestock that roamed freely across the island, trampling his crops. On the morning of June 15, 1859, Cutler woke up to find a massive black British boar tearing through his garden yet again. Cutler snapped. He grabbed his musket and shot the animal dead. Realizing what he had done, Cutler walked over to the British farm manager, Charles Griffin, and offered $10 in compensation. Griffin rejected the money, claiming the pig was a prize breeder, and demanded a staggering $100. Cutler refused to pay. Griffin retaliated by threatening to have Cutler arrested and dragged in front of a British colonial court. Facing foreign imprisonment, Cutler immediately sent an appeal to the U.S. military for protection. On a disputed island with no agreed-upon civil law, there are no police to call. A petty argument over property damage has nowhere to go but up the chain of command, forcing a local farm dispute to rapidly transform into a matter of national security. Cutler's plea landed on the desk of U.S. General William Harney. Harney harbored a documented hatred for the British, and rather than smoothing things over, he seized the dead pig as the perfect pretext to assert American jurisdiction over the entire island. Harney quickly dispatched Captain George Pickett and 64 men to San Juan Island. Pickett landed, set up a military camp, and posted a public proclamation declaring the island strictly United States territory. The British colonial governor, James Douglas, could not let that stand. He retaliated by sending a massive Royal Navy blockade, complete with heavily armed warships, to surround Pickett's meager dirt fort. Governor Douglas ordered his naval commanders to land Marines and clear the Americans off the island. But Rear Admiral Robert Baines and Captain Jeffrey Hornby looked at their orders and refused to open fire. Baines flatly declared he would not involve two great nations in a war over a squabble about a pig. Military brinkmanship relies on the assumption that the other side will flinch. Both nations had marched right to the edge of combat, and disaster was only averted because frontline commanders weighed the absurdity of the situation and actively chose insubordination over violence. When officials in Washington and London realized they were on the verge of war, they panicked. The U.S. government dispatched Lieutenant General Winfield Scott to dial the standoff back. He negotiated a stand-down, leaving a small, equal number of troops from both nations on the island. What followed was a surreal 12-year joint occupation. The American and British soldiers essentially became neighbors. They shared supplies, attended each other's banquets, and routinely hosted athletic competitions. Finally, in 1871, both nations decided to resolve the border permanently. They agreed to step away from the negotiation table and outsource the final binding verdict to an impartial third party, Kaiser Wilhelm I of Germany. Looking back at the map of the Straits, the Kaiser's commission ruled in 1872 that the boundary should follow the western path through Haro Strait. They awarded the islands to the United States, and the British peacefully packed up their garrison and sailed home. For the two empires, the arbitration was a massive diplomatic victory, but the rigid enforcement of this new international border cut right through the ancestral lands of the indigenous Coast Salish people, severing ancient travel routes and stripping legal rights from the Hawaiian laborers who had settled there. Today, the San Juan Island standoff stands as a remarkable model of diplomatic restraint. Two global powers brought cannons, warships, and hundreds of soldiers to a dispute, but the only casualty was a single farm animal. Follow Oops History for more interesting history stories and fascinating content from the past. We usually measure military success by victories on the battlefield, but as the Pig War proves, sometimes the greatest achievements in history are the catastrophic wars that level-headed leaders actively choose not to fight.